What's up, people? I'm Matt Lange, and I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. Some of you may know me from Produce Like a Pro, but what you may not know is I'm also the head of audio content over at Avid, and we launched a new program a couple months ago called Sonic Drop. And Sonic Drop, it is a content delivery program where every month I give you free new samples and eventually instruments, presets, all that kind of stuff. And it's available to anyone who is on any level of subscription. Doesn't matter if you're an artist for 10 bucks a month or all the way up to Ultimate, it's entitled to you. Also, if you have a perpetual license and an active support plan, you also have the same entitlement. So it's really cool that I'm just able to actually make a lot of fun sounds for you, and I get to curate what I give you. And I like to think I have a pretty awesome taste in sound. So this is what this is. We just released a sample pack called Mike Avename Burnin' Breaks. It's done in collaboration with our dear friend Mike Avename. He's a very, very talented drummer and producer. He's currently on tour somewhere in Asia at the moment. I don't know where, because he's kind of in a different place every day. But he wanted to create a drum pack that essentially was the sound of a 70s style drum kit that had been sampled off of vinyl. And the way my brain works, because I grew up like listening to The Prodigy and 90s jungle, drum and bass, I love all that kind of stuff. And consequently, if I see breakbeats, my brain immediately tells me I need to chop it up and throw it into a sampler and just go to town on making complex rhythms out of a breakbeat, because it's just, to me, it's the coolest sound. So I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. And also, while you're at it, check the link below. Check out the Pro Tools Sonic Drop. It's a ton of really cool content, and there's more and more coming every month. And let's dive in. So this is our drum loop, and this loop, of course, comes from Mike Avename Burnin' Beats, the new sample pack from Sonic Drop. As you can see, it's called Groove 3, 95 BPM, Beat 1. As a reminder, it sounds like this. So first, I'm going to set the tempo of our session to be 95. And I'm deciding I'm only going to use the second half of the loop, mainly because it has a little bit more of the performance I want. But in the meantime, first, we're actually going to go and we're going to time correct everything, because by nature, these loops are not corrected. They are raw, they are live, and you can see the timing, it does move a bit. And that's great for, a lot of things. For what we're about to do, we actually want it to be gridded entirely. So I'm just gonna take this latter half and just using Elastic Audio, just quantize it to hard 16ths. I am gonna check the attacks from time to time, see for instance, actually that sounds fine. We'll leave that there. That's okay. I can see the snare is just a little behind. So I'll bring that up, and everything else looks to be pretty okay. It doesn't need to be totally perfect, but close enough. So that works for me. And now I'm just gonna render it down, commit it, and I'm just gonna cut off the first end. So the first thing I'm going to do, or the first trick, is we're going to cut every transient into a different slice and then load those up into a sampler. So I'm just going to go and manually cut. So those are all my individual slices, and I'm just going to export these. And I'll create a folder. I'm just going to call it, let's say, slices 1. And just drop them in there. So now I'm going to open up a sampler. I'm going to mute that. And Contact is my personal sampler of choice. You can do this, though, in really any sampler that will allow you to do multi-samples. So you don't have to use Contact. It's just what I like. But I'm just going to call this Break. I'm going to open it up, go to my mapping editor, and I'm just going to take my slices, and I'm going to drag them right in there. And with Contact, again, this varies per sampler, but you can actually choose how many keys you want the slices to take. I just want 1 key per slice. So I'm just going to drag them like that. And there we go. So the other thing that I would encourage you to do, take your max voice polyphony, your max voice count, drop it to 1, because we don't really want these things to play on top of each other. So, and for the second technique, this is extremely important, but for this too. So that's done there. And also on your ADSR, I would pretty much drop the release. Again, the individual slices are already cut, so there isn't really a tail end, but it's just to be safe. And now we could actually totally recreate that drum beat pretty much verbatim just by dragging in or drawing that rhythm. So let's just create a region. And let's go to C1. That's where it starts. And this is where they become 16th notes. So now when we play back the slices, remember the channel above is muted. So that's our groove, right? But the first thing I want to do is I actually want to change the tempo. So let's go up to 160 because I like 160. So now it sounds like this. And I also want to start pitching up the sound of the drums as if, you know, we did a old school various speed pitch shift on them. And you can go pretty high. I'm gonna say 7. Do it by taste. Then I'm just gonna add some, let's add some distortion from the classic isotope trash. And then I'm gonna add a little more saturation from the black box, which is a really great saturator. And you can hear once we're adding all this distortion and saturation, it is bringing up the room tone a lot. Some of the resonance of the snare. So I do have an EQ that I added, just kind of taking out some of those dips and boosting the highs a little bit. But let's actually start changing the pattern a little bit. We don't need to do the exact same rhythm because, you know, what's the fun in that? So I'm just gonna create a new region. I'm gonna keep that as a reference. So maybe even I'll just start it over here, just so I have, these are my notes, but I'm gonna start moving things around. So more like learning where the individual hits are, because it's not like it says on the key, you know, this is drum, snare slice, all that. So I'm gonna manually do this. So I'm just gonna get rid of those. And I'm gonna repeat the first 3 hits. And then let's find a hi-hat. That's a hat. And that's the little ghost snare. And let's create another variation of this pattern. And let's go up to that flam, or the roll at the very end. That's a great sound. Let's use it right there also. And let's take a little ghost snare right there. And let's see how this sounds. So that's just kind of like the starting point of it, and you can get really wild, but you know, this is the basic idea. So let's go into technique number 2. And this is actually my preferred technique because I do find it to be a little bit more creative. It is definitely not as immediate, and it is a little bit more complicated, but especially when you're actually doing it. But I do find it opens up different creative ideas that you don't necessarily find with, you know, slices of every individual hit. So let's go back to our, this is our main loop, remember? And I'm going to set this back to 95 beats per minute. And remember, this is our corrected loop. So everything's gonna be, you know, right on the grid. And now I'm going to actually turn on the time stretching again. I'm gonna say Varispeed mode. And I'm gonna switch the tempo back to 160. So now it does that. And for this technique, you need to time stretch your loop to exactly the tempo you're gonna be working at, because we're actually gonna be triggering much longer parts of the loop. So as opposed to individual hits, we're gonna be actually just changing the start point of the loop. So this is now gonna be rendered down. Let's just call this one 160 BPM. I am just going to move this over here just for the sake of looking at things. But now this is how we're going to create the slices. So this whole thing is going to be slice 1. Slice 2 is going to be that. Slice 3 is going to be that. And so on. You see where I'm going with this, so allow me to time travel a bit and save you the monotony. So these are going to be our slices now. And I'm just going to export these into a new folder. So let's go up a folder and let's call this slices 2. And we're going to export them. Done. And now let's go to a sampler again and create a new one. And I'm going to call this Break 2. So let's go to our mapping editor. Let's grab Break 2. So slices 2. And sometimes it just names things a little bit funny. And so you can see, for instance, like this would be our biggest slice. It's our longest file, and that's at the bottom. So I'm just going to grab the rest of them and start them all at C#1. And now I'm going to go back and grab that first hit, the first slice, and put that at C1. And also remember, this is where it really matters. Go to your max voice count, set this to 1, because if you don't, this could happen. It's junk. But if we do it with 1, now every time you play a new slice, it's going to gate the one before. So that's very handy for what we're about to do. And also get rid of your release, like entirely. So that's all what we need the sampler for. And let's turn our chain back on. Also, there's a little bit of reverb we can add. It's just on Ascend, and it is just this lustrous plates from Liquid Sonics and Slate. It sounds really good on drums. So now our break sounds like this, right? So now let's start programming a rhythm using the big slices. So create a region. Here's C1. So this would be the whole loop. But let's not do that. You're going to see the way you do slices now are very different because the slices are for performances as opposed to individual drums. And let's find that hi-hat and snare again. So now that sounds like this. Let's take this up to that roll. And maybe use the hat right before. Which means, theoretically we could just do that. Let's do a couple more variations. And the cool thing about this is, again, you can really play with the performances. So let's take that there. Let's take the snare. And one more snare right there. So let's hear how this sounds. And that's a way you can create a classic rolling breakbeat. It's a ton of fun. And just for, just for the sake of it, if you want to do like the time stretching thing, it works very well with this kind of method where let's just create a duplicate of this track. And yeah, we can keep the active playlist. Why not? So here's our duplicate. And I'm just going to get rid of this stuff. And I'm going to make the length of this region be twice as long. So, and I want basically halftime. So now if I go into contact, and remember there's a separate instance. It's going to be the same break, but it's going to be played at half the speed. But remember, the samples themselves are at full tempo. So it works, but you know, it's not what we're going for. So we're going to go actually to, let's say, Time Machine. And I like this one because it's, you know, more granular sounding. And let's say set the speed to 50. And I don't want the smoothing. Check this out. And you can play with the grain length to see what you like, or let's say 25%. And let's turn the smoothing off entirely. So I think personally that 50% sounded better, but let's also put the snare up there. So you could actually do some kind of performance where you say, let's take these two bars and let's take this, for instance. And we'll just do that. And then bring it in. So you could have something that sounds like, you know, this, for instance. It's a ton of fun. What can I say? Gotta go try it. So hopefully that gave you some creative ideas. As you can tell, I love doing this stuff. I just think chopping up breaks is just the most fun thing in the world. So while you're at it, check the link below. Go check out the Pro Tools Sonic Drop and the Mike Avename Burning Breaks sample pack. And keep an eye out. There's going to be new content, new samples, new stuff every month, every third Thursday. And remember, if you're a Pro Tools subscriber, it doesn't matter if you're an artist or ultimate or you have a support plan, this stuff is free to you. Go try chopping up some breakbeats.